April 28, 1943. 0640 hours. The steel doors of the transport ship creak open as cold Atlantic air pours into the hold. For the German prisoners standing shoulder to shoulder in sweat-stained Afrika Korps uniforms, the smell is unfamiliar, not salt and rust alone, but something sweeter, almost creamy. Boots scrape against metal as U.S. Army guards shout orders in clipped English. One by one, the prisoners step onto American soil for the first time, blinking against the pale morning light of Norfolk Harbor, Virginia. None of them yet understands that the war they thought they knew has already begun to unravel. These men have crossed an ocean not as conquerors but as captives, veterans of Rommel's Afrika Korps captured in Tunisia after the Axis collapse in North Africa. For months, Nazi propaganda had prepared them for this moment. America, they had been told, was a hollow giant, racially divided, economically brittle, decadent but weak. Its factories were exaggerated, its people soft, its soldiers overfed and undisciplined. The Reich's broadcasts promised that captivity in the United States would be short-lived or unbearable. But as the trucks roll inland past tidy houses, paved roads, and gas stations glowing with neon signs, a quiet confusion spreads through the ranks. There are no ruins here, no ration lines, no bomb craters. Even the civilians who pause to stare at the convoy look well-fed, well-dressed, and calm. The camp appears just before noon, Camp Shelby, Mississippi, rows of wooden barracks, watchtowers, and barbed wire stretching across a landscape lush with spring green. The heat is different from North Africa, heavy and wet, clinging to skin. Guards march the prisoners inside, inventorying them with bureaucratic efficiency, names, ranks, serial numbers. Then something unexpected happens. Lunch. Metal trays slide down a serving line, not thin soup, not ersatz bread, but white bread, soft, fresh, meat, vegetables, and then, placed almost casually beside the plate, a glass bottle, dark brown liquid fizzing against the sides. The cap is removed with a sharp psst. Coca-Cola. The prisoners stare, a few laugh nervously, convinced this must be a trick. One corporal sniffs the bottle before tasting it, half expecting poison. The sweetness shocks him. It is colder than the air, impossibly cold. Ice clinks inside the glass. Ice. Refrigeration, something almost unknown to most German households by 1943, is being used here for enemy prisoners. Within days, rumors ripple through the camp. The Americans serve dessert. Actual dessert. Vanilla ice cream appears after dinner, scooped from metal tubs, sweating in the southern heat. Some prisoners refuse it at first, suspicious of excess. Others eat slowly, savoring each spoonful, trying to reconcile this reality with everything they had been taught. These are not isolated gestures. U.S. Army regulations strictly adhere to the Geneva Convention of 1929, mandating that POWs receive rations equal in quantity and quality to those of American base troops. For the United States, an industrial power untouched by enemy bombs, this standard means abundance. The prisoners receive over 3,500 calories per day, fresh milk, coffee, sugar, cigarettes, even beer on occasion. For men who had watched supply lines collapse in North Africa, who had rationed water by the capful and fuel by the drop, this feels unreal. At night, lying on clean bunks with actual mattresses, the prisoners talk in whispers. Some insist it is temporary, a show for the Red Cross. Others argue that America is spending itself into ruin, burning resources it cannot replace. But doubt has already set in. If this is weakness, it does not look like the weakness they were promised. Outside the wire, American guards are just as observant. Many are farm boys from Iowa, mechanics from Detroit, clerks from Brooklyn. They are told to remain distant, professional, yet they notice how the Germans marvel at mundane things: electric lights that never flicker, trucks that start every morning, warehouses stacked floor to ceiling with food. One guard later recalls a moment that stays with him: a German sergeant holding a paper cup of ice cream, staring at it as if it were a weapon. "How can you fight a country that has this?" the man mutters, not angrily but with something close to awe. No lectures are given, no arguments made. The Americans do not need to defend their system. They simply let it exist, day after day, meal after meal. Propaganda collapses not under force, but under routine. And as weeks pass, a subtle transformation begins, quiet, invisible, but irreversible. The prisoners start writing letters home, carefully worded at first, censored, restrained. But between the lines, a new truth seeps through. America is not starving. America is not breaking. America is everywhere. The war, they are beginning to realize, may already be lost. The realization does not arrive all at once. It creeps in slowly, carried on routine and repetition, reinforced by small, undeniable details that no amount of ideological training can fully explain away. Morning reveille comes at the same hour every day. Breakfast follows, eggs powdered but plentiful, toast still warm, coffee strong enough to bite. The guards are firm but not cruel. Orders are given, rules enforced. Yet there is no desperation in their movements, no sense that resources are being hoarded or stretched thin. Work details are organized within days. Under the Geneva Convention, enlisted POWs may be required to perform non-military labor, and the Americans waste nothing. German prisoners are marched beyond the wire to pick cotton, repair roads, cut timber, and unload freight cars. They are paid for it, 80 cents per day, credited to camp canteens where they can buy soap, toothpaste, writing paper, chocolate, even more Coca-Cola. The first time a prisoner steps into a camp canteen, he freezes. Shelves line the walls, stocked like a civilian shop. Not staged, not symbolic, fully supplied. The clink of coins, the hum of an electric refrigerator, the casual way an American clerk slides ice cream across the counter. It feels obscene to men raised on speeches about sacrifice and scarcity. Back in the barracks, arguments erupt. Some cling fiercely to doctrine, insisting that this abundance proves America's moral decay. They eat like this because they do not know how to fight, one lieutenant snaps. They will collapse when tested. But the counter-arguments grow sharper each week. If American weakness is real, why are there so many trucks? Why so much fuel? Why trains arriving on schedule, loaded with food not just for soldiers, but for prisoners? Letters from home make the contrast unbearable. Paper-thin envelopes describe ration cards, turnip soup, air raid sirens, cities reduced to ash. Wives apologize for sending nothing with their letters because there is nothing left to send. Mothers ask if their sons have enough to eat. The prisoners do not know how to answer. The Americans understand the psychological terrain instinctively. They do not taunt, they do not boast. They allow the Germans to overhear conversations about baseball scores, car engines, weekend dances. Newspapers circulate freely, reporting Allied advances in Italy and the Pacific, alongside advertisements for refrigerators, cigarettes, and soft drinks. The message is never spoken, but it is omnipresent. This war is being fought by a society that has not emptied itself to do so. Medical inspections deepen the shock. Men who had marched across the Libyan desert with infected wounds now find themselves recovering in clean infirmaries with white sheets and steady electricity. One POW, a former medical orderly, watches an American nurse discard a half-used bottle of penicillin and feels something inside him fracture. In Germany, such medicine would be guarded like gold. Even discipline carries an unfamiliar logic. When a prisoner violates camp rules, fighting, refusing work, attempting escape, punishment is swift but measured. Extra duties, restricted canteen access, solitary confinement that lasts days, not months. There are no beatings, no disappearances. The system does not rely on fear alone. It relies on order. By late summer 1943, the Africa Corps veterans begin to understand that captivity in America is not meant to break their bodies. It is doing something far more dangerous. It is eroding certainty. Ideology depends on isolation. Here, isolation is impossible. Some men learn English from guards or from American-issued textbooks meant to occupy idle hours. They listen to radio broadcasts, jazz, swing, news reports delivered without shouting. Music that would be banned at home drifts across the camp at night, soft and rhythmic, impossible to reconcile with images of a degenerate enemy. A few men begin to change in visible ways. Shoulders relax, conversations widen beyond tactics and orders. They argue politics, economics, the future. Others double down, retreating into rigid hierarchy, drilling fellow prisoners, enforcing Nazi salutes inside the barracks, as if ritual alone can restore meaning. The Americans watch all of it carefully. Counterintelligence officers compile reports. They note morale fractures, ideological hardliners, potential collaborators. But for the most part, they let the environment do the work. There is no re-education program yet, no forced denazification lectures, just time, comfort, and contradiction. As the evening drops behind the Mississippi pines, a group of German POWs sits outside the barracks, cups of Coca-Cola sweating in their hands. A freight train roars past beyond the fence, car after car after car, loaded and moving fast. No blackouts, no camouflage nets, no fear of bombers. A young private finally says what many have been thinking but few dare to voice. If this is their rear, he murmurs, what must their front look like? No one answers him. They don't need to. The question hangs in the humid air, heavier than any guard tower, and with it comes a dawning understanding that the enemy they were sent to defeat is not only stronger, but fundamentally different.
Different in ways that cannot be countered with slogans or discipline, the realization settles into the camp like a second climate, inescapable, persistent. Days pass, and the routines that once felt surreal become normalized, which only deepens their impact. Abundance, when sustained, stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling structural. This is not a country straining under wartime illusion. This is a system operating at scale. The work details expand. German POWs are sent farther afield, to farms, lumber yards, rail depots. They ride in trucks that run flawlessly, engines humming without hesitation. Gasoline is never rationed. Tires are never bald. Tools are new, standardized, interchangeable. A mechanic from the Africa Corps notices that if a tractor breaks down, another one replaces it within the hour. There is no waiting for parts, no improvisation with wire and scrap metal. The Americans assume replacement, not repair. Farmers treat the prisoners with a cautious civility. Some offer cigarettes, others hand over cold water drawn from electric pumps. On lunch breaks, POWs watch American field hands eat sandwiches thick with meat, apples pulled from crates, soda bottles pulled from ice-filled chests. The Germans exchange glances. These are not soldiers, these are civilians, yet they live better than most officers back home. Back at camp, the letters continue to arrive. Censorship scissors out military details, but not despair. Hamburg, Cologne, Essen, cities reduced to names and smoke. One prisoner reads about his family sleeping in cellars night after night, factories smashed, trains barely running. He folds the letter carefully, then looks at the barracks light glowing steadily overhead, powered by a grid that has never once failed him. A few men break down, quietly, in latrines, under blankets at night, not from mistreatment, but from the collapse of meaning. Everything they endured in Africa, the thirst, the dead comrades, the endless retreat, was justified by the belief that Germany was holding the line against a decaying world. Here, that belief has nowhere to stand. Hardline Nazis attempt to reassert control. They organize secret meetings, pressure others to report defeatist talk, threaten men who fraternize too freely with guards. But their authority erodes with every ice-cold drink and every uneventful night's sleep. Ideology cannot compete with lived experience when that experience is consistent, generous, and unforced. The Americans quietly intervene when necessary. Known agitators are transferred, ringleaders separated, not violently, administratively. Paperwork replaces punishment. The system absorbs resistance without spectacle. In the infirmary, a former Luftwaffe corporal recovers from tuberculosis. He is fed extra rations, monitored daily, given medicine he knows is unavailable in Germany anymore. An American doctor explains the treatment plan calmly, without contempt. The corporal listens, nods, and later tells another patient, "They are trying to save me." The sentence sounds strange to his own ears. By early 1944, rumors circulate among the prisoners about other camps: Camp Hearn in Texas, Camp Papago Park in Arizona, even camps in the Midwest where winters are harsher, but food remains plentiful. Tens of thousands of German POWs are spread across the United States, and the pattern is the same everywhere. No starvation, no chaos, no breakdown. And the war news grows worse. Italy has fallen. Rome is declared an open city. Allied bombers range deeper into the Reich. The Eastern Front bleeds endlessly. The newspapers do not hide American casualties, but they also do not hide production numbers. Ships launched per week, planes per month. Figures so large they barely seem real. One evening during a Red Cross inspection, a German officer watches American staff coordinate logistics: clipboards, telephones, typewriters clicking non-stop. Supplies are logged, tracked, redistributed. Nothing is wasted, nothing hoarded. He realizes with sudden clarity that this is not just wealth, it is organization, scale married to efficiency. In the barracks that night, the conversations change tone. Less bravado, more speculation. What will happen after the war? What kind of world produces this kind of power without collapsing under it? A former schoolteacher admits he no longer believes Germany can win. No one contradicts him.
The Coca-Cola bottles are collected at lights out, but the taste lingers. Sweetness and carbonation, trivial things, yet symbolic. They represent refrigeration, transport, sugar supply chains, glass factories, rail logistics, electrical grids, an entire civilization compressed into a drink. For the first time, many of these men understand that the battlefield was never just Tunisia or Libya or Sicily. It was industrial, economic, psychological. And in that war, the United States has been fighting on terrain of its own design. As the camp settles into silence, a guard walks the perimeter, hands in his pockets, unhurried. Beyond the wire, the lights of a nearby town glow steadily against the dark. No blackout curtains, no sirens. Inside the barracks, a German POW stares at the ceiling and thinks, not of escape, not of revenge, but of return, of what, if anything, will still be standing when he goes home. Return becomes an abstract concept, something spoken of but no longer visualized. As 1944 turns toward its violent peak, time inside the American camps stretches in strange ways. Days are orderly, predictable. The outside world, by contrast, fractures in headlines and rumors. For the prisoners, the war is now something they witness indirectly, filtered through newspapers, radio bulletins, and the subtle tightening of silence in letters from home. Then comes June 6, 1944. The news arrives without ceremony, printed in bold type and spoken in measured tones over the radio. Allied forces have landed in Normandy. Not a raid, not a probe, an invasion. The guards do not celebrate, they do not gloat, they simply post the notice and continue their routines. But inside the barracks, the impact is seismic. Maps are drawn from memory, beaches named, divisions guessed. Veterans of the Africa Corps understand immediately what this means. An operation of this scale requires an ocean of supplies, ships, fuel, food, ammunition, flowing continuously, flawlessly. And suddenly the ice cream, the Coca-Cola, the endless trucks all make sense as part of something far larger. In the weeks that follow, work details continue as usual, but the prisoners' posture changes. They read newspapers with new eyes, scanning casualty lists, tracking advances mile by mile. When Cherbourg falls, no one speaks. When Paris is liberated, a few men quietly remove their insignia and tuck it away. The Americans begin to adjust camp life subtly. Political discussions are allowed, even encouraged in monitored settings. Libraries expand, classes are offered, English, mathematics, engineering. Not indoctrination, but exposure. The implication is clear. This war will end, and when it does, these men will need to exist in a world shaped by American power. Some prisoners embrace this, others resist bitterly, but resistance now feels hollow. The guards are relaxed, confident. New units rotate through, young soldiers training for deployment, brimming with equipment, casually discussing destinations like France or the Pacific. They do not sound afraid, they sound busy. One afternoon, a group of German POWs is assigned to unload crates at a rail depot. The markings catch their attention, supplies bound for Europe, food, medical kits, winter clothing already being prepared months in advance. The scale is staggering. The war, they realize, is being planned not week to week, but season to season. Back in camp, tensions erupt among the prisoners themselves. A hardline Nazi officer is confronted by younger enlisted men who accuse him of lying to them, of selling fantasies while the Reich burns. The argument nearly turns violent before American guards intervene, not with weapons drawn, but with firm commands and separation. Order restored, no bloodshed. The contrast is impossible to ignore. Medical care improves further as American resources surge. New equipment arrives, dental units, X-ray machines. Prisoners with chronic injuries from Africa find themselves treated, rehabilitated, even fitted with prosthetics. The implication is unsettling. America is investing in the future health of enemy soldiers while fighting the largest war in history. At night, radios play softly. Glenn Miller, Bing Crosby, songs about home, longing, optimism. Some prisoners scoff, others listen in silence. The music carries a confidence that feels unshakable, not triumphal, but assured. Letters from Germany become rarer. When they do arrive, they are shorter. Cities erased, factories gone, entire neighborhoods missing. One prisoner reads that his hometown no longer exists in any meaningful sense. He folds the letter and does not speak for days. By autumn 1944, the prisoners understand they are no longer hostages to American mercy, but witnesses to American momentum. The abundance they first encountered is not indulgence, it is overflow. This country is producing more than it can consume, even in war. The Coca-Cola bottles still arrive cold, ice cream still appears on Sundays, electricity still hums through the camp at night. Nothing tightens, nothing diminishes. The war is approaching its bloodiest climax, and yet here there is no sense of strain. For men raised on the idea that sacrifice is proof of strength, this is the final, devastating lesson. Strength, they are learning, can look like ease, like preparation, like quiet certainty. And as winter approaches, with rumors of a final German offensive in the Ardennes, the prisoners wait, not with hope, not with dread, but with a heavy, resigned understanding that the world they knew is already gone.
The final German offensive comes and goes like a distant storm. The Battle of the Bulge reaches the camps not in artillery thunder, but in headlines and radio bulletins. Initial German advances spark a brief, dangerous flicker of hope among the most loyal prisoners. Maps are redrawn. Old confidence tries to reassert itself. But the flicker dies quickly, smothered by reports of overwhelming American counterattacks, by statistics that speak of fuel reserves, air superiority, and divisions arriving faster than they can be destroyed. Winter settles over the camps. In the South, it is mild. In the Midwest, brutal. Yet everywhere, the barracks are heated. Coal arrives on time. Blankets are thick. Boots are replaced when worn. German POWs, veterans of frozen nights on the Eastern Front or the wind-scoured desert, understand exactly what this means. Logistics, again, systems that anticipate need before it becomes crisis. In January 1945, the war's end begins to feel not just inevitable, but imminent. The Americans subtly shift their approach. Newsreels are screened in camp halls, images of liberated towns, emaciated civilians, piles of shoes and hair at places the prisoners have never heard named before. Majdanek, Auschwitz, Buchenwald. There is no commentary at first, just images. Some prisoners look away. Others stare, frozen, unable to reconcile what they are seeing with what they believed. Denial fractures along predictable lines. A few insist it is staged, exaggerated, allied lies, but many more fall silent, their internal defenses already weakened by months of contradiction. The abundance that once seemed merely impressive now takes on a moral dimension. This country did not need to brutalize prisoners to win. It did not need camps of terror. It simply outproduced, outorganized, and outlasted. Conversations shift again. Guilt enters the vocabulary, responsibility, ignorance. Men who once measured themselves by rank and medals now measure themselves by what they allowed, what they ignored, what they failed to question. In the camp canteens, Coca-Cola remains cheap and plentiful. Ice cream still appears, though less frequently in winter. The symbolic power of these things has changed. They are no longer shocking. They are evidence, proof that an entire civilization can mobilize without consuming itself. As the Red Army closes on Berlin and Allied forces cross the Rhine, guards become more relaxed still. Rifles are slung casually. Some guards talk openly with prisoners about post-war plans, college on the GI Bill, factories converting back to civilian production, homes being built in places that have never seen war. The contrast is devastating. April arrives with rumors that feel unreal. Hitler is in Berlin. Hitler is dead. Hitler is not dead. Then, finally, confirmation. The Reich has fallen. Germany has surrendered unconditionally. There is no celebration in the camps, no cheering, just a long collective exhale. Some prisoners sit down where they stand. Others retreat to their bunks and stare at nothing. A few weep, not for the regime, but for lost years, lost certainty, lost illusions. American officers address the prisoners calmly. The war is over. They will remain in custody for now. There is work to be done. Reconstruction, repatriation, accountability. The tone is firm, but not vindictive. That night, the lights stay on as usual. Electricity hums. The guards walk their rounds. In the barracks, conversations stretch late into the dark. What will Germany look like? Will there be food? Homes? A future? One man, a former Africa Corps sergeant, holds a bottle of Coca-Cola and turns it slowly in his hands. He remembers being told that America would collapse under its own excess, that this abundance was weakness. He understands now how profoundly wrong that was. Strength, he realizes, is not measured only in tanks or courage. It is measured in supply chains that do not break, in systems that feed even enemies, in a society confident enough to let its power speak quietly. The bottle sweats in his palm, cold, solid, real. And for the first time since his capture, he is not thinking about the war, but about what kind of country he will return to, and whether it can ever be rebuilt without lies.
Rebuilding begins in the mind, long before it begins on the ground. In the months after Germany's surrender, the camps enter a new phase, no longer defined by war, but not yet shaped by peace. The barbed wire remains, the guard towers still stand, yet the tension that once coiled through every interaction has loosened, replaced by a strange, reflective quiet. The prisoners are no longer called enemy. Official documents now read disarmed enemy forces. It is a subtle shift in language, but a powerful one. Work details are reorganized. More men are assigned to agricultural labor, rebuilding roads, repairing rail lines damaged during wartime transport surges. They are still paid, still fed, still housed with the same efficiency that first unsettled them. What changes is the conversation. American officers speak openly about the future of Germany, about occupation zones, about rebuilding industry, not dismantling it entirely, about preventing hunger, not exploiting it. For men conditioned to expect collective punishment, this approach feels almost incomprehensible. Classes expand further: history, civics, basic economics, not lectures of blame, but explanations of systems, how federalism works, how independent courts function, how a free press operates. Some prisoners attend out of boredom, others out of curiosity, a few out of desperation, trying to understand how the world they fought collapsed so completely. The canteens remain stocked. Coca-Cola is still there. So is ice cream, though now it feels almost ceremonial, an echo of the moment everything began to unravel. These things no longer shock, they anchor memory. The prisoners understand now that what stunned them was never the taste, but what it represented: continuity, stability, confidence under pressure. Letters from Germany finally change tone, relief mixed with grief. Reports of ruined cities, but also of food shipments arriving, of occupation authorities organizing kitchens, of American trucks rolling through streets once choked with rubble. The descriptions sound eerily familiar. Some prisoners are interviewed by American psychologists and intelligence officers, not to extract secrets, but to understand transformation. They are asked when their beliefs changed. Most struggle to answer. There was no single moment, no dramatic confrontation, just accumulation, meal after meal, day after day. Ice in a glass, lights that stayed on. By late 1945, repatriation begins. Groups are processed carefully, medically examined, issued new clothing. The men line up with duffel bags heavier than when they arrived, not with contraband, but with notebooks, letters, small purchases from canteens. Evidence of time spent thinking rather than fighting. On departure days, trucks carry them back to ports. The same Atlantic they crossed as captives now waits to return them as survivors. Some look back at the camps one last time: the guard towers, the wire, the flags snapping in the wind. The place that dismantled a worldview without firing a shot. Years later, many of these former prisoners will speak openly about their captivity, not with bitterness, but with unease. They will describe how Nazi propaganda did not die under interrogation or punishment, but under refrigeration, logistics, and routine decency. How the myth of American weakness dissolved not in argument, but in ice cream. One former Africa Corps officer will say it plainly: "We were defeated long before we understood why. The camps only made it visible." The legacy of those camps does not appear in victory parades or monuments. It exists in post-war Germany's quiet acceptance of a new order, in the willingness to rebuild rather than resist endlessly, in the memory of a society that proved its strength not through cruelty, but through capacity. The war ended with signatures and surrender documents, but for tens of thousands of German POWs, the war truly ended much earlier, in moments so ordinary they almost felt insignificant. A cold bottle opened with a soft hiss. Ice clinking in a glass. Lights that never went out.